Yeah. Good afternoon. There we go. Cool. So this afternoon, I'm not going to take too much time. I know we're a little bit running over, but I wanted to take you through a little bit around what's happening with cloud. I know there's been a couple of discussions previously before this, but I want to take you through what's actually happening, where we're at, where we're going, because this is obviously going to affect a number of your network strategies. As Mark Tinker once has done a presentation around the 4 horsemen, they have arrived. Cool. So before going about where we're going to, I'd like to take a step back and kind of using Terrico as the example, because a lot of people talk around neutral co-location. We've had a number of conversations with various African countries around investment, helping to build neutral co-location. What does it mean for my country? What do I need to do? So I kind of like to use Terrico as the example. So you'll see these are our 2, well, and Joburg was another original data center. But essentially, we started in Cape Town and in a storeroom that we had converted, funny enough, MTN storeroom, so thank you, MTN. And then from there grew into Durban, Joburg, etc. But total IT load that we initially invested in was sitting at about 2 megawatt IT load. To today, this is just Johannesburg itself, is sitting at over 40 megawatt IT load. To us going live by February, so you'll see this is the new site that's happening now in Johannesburg. So there's a pointer. So that's the one that we built a year and a half ago. This little one here, now called Little Terrico, was our original Johannesburg site. To this, which is now phase 1, and going live February 2020 with over 60 megawatts of power. So you kind of think, how did this happen? I mean, this investment is sitting in excess of $250 million. How did this happen? What happened in South Africa's culture to allow this kind of investment to happen? So essentially before 2018, we were a highly regulated market. We had limited subsea cable capacity, single operators, and as many of you may or may not know, for a neutral data center to be successful, you need as many operators as possible. Can't just have 1 or 2, because if that equates to selling cabinets and power, you're only selling 2 cabinets. So in 2008, LTEC did a court case, which then deregulated the whole of the South African market. So if you look at Terrico's history, we're now 11 years old, and if it wasn't for that deregulation, we would have never existed, which means that investment in South Africa would have never happened. So if I look at today, we're sitting at actually over, on the exchange on NAP Africa, we're sitting at over 400 unique ASNs, peering at 800 gig peering traffic. We've got 2 successful IXP operators, Jinx and NAP Africa. Most of the content operators, the CDNs, have invested, and now the cloud is actually invested. So why was the time right? As mentioned, your starting block is always deregulation. Some of you may like that, some of you may not like that, but that's what drives this kind of investment to happen. The other starting block is around latency. So if you have a look, and a lot of you will know this, is latency to South Africa, and what I like to say in the world of IP, literally from a South African term, it is flat. So essentially, latency was a massive issue. We didn't have things like YouTube, Facebook, all these kinds of things. We ended up having to trombone Europe and back again, which therefore made it not a usable product. So it started to becoming quite a reality that these kinds of investment had to happen. Including the cloud is coming. So I like to say it's coming, but it's actually here. So some of you may or may not know, but Microsoft has gone live in South Africa with their Africa region. Amazon has made it publicly available that they will be live Q1 next year, which they will, in the South African region. And Google is on the way in terms of their cloud deployments. So what does that mean for you guys as technical audience is how do you actually connect? How do you take this value back to your customers? Because they're all essentially asking for it. So in terms of cloud, I can also tell you we're turning up connections or cross connections to these cloud providers on a daily basis. So it's not a pipe dream, it's something that's actually physically happening right now. And how do you change your network architecture, how do you adapt your products and commercial offerings to be able to get your clients access to these environments. So we've launched what's called Africa's Cloud Exchange. So some of the global guys will know Equinix has a cloud exchange, Insurrection has a cloud exchange. So we've launched Africa Cloud Exchange, and it's available out of Terraco Johannesburg and Terraco Cape Town. One of the things we've done really different there in the name of our neutrality is we just charge it as a cross connect. So we don't charge capacity. As long as you can reach it, you can do a physical VLAN service directly to any one of those cloud providers. A little bit different to some of the other global colo operators and their models, but we believe that Africa literally has a huge opportunity to start creating a commercial product, a layer 2 product, and taking that back to your various countries. So that's why we've once again been the nice guys. So this is kind of a how to connect, but please come chat to me if you don't have time or don't find me. You can email cloud@terraco.co.za. We're working with a number of the neighboring countries, so you can actually definitely just email us through any questions, any technical questions, but essentially it's as simple as that. Get to Terraco Johannesburg, either via a provider, or if you've got your own space in the data center already, just request the VLAN service to the cloud exchange, and then we'll get you live immediately to any one of those cloud providers. So what does it mean from a latency perspective? So what we did was we saw, okay, Azure's, this was actually a test done on Azure because they're obviously the first region that's gone live. So we turned up a virtual routing environment into Azure. And that's you'll see it's called South Africa North, which is actually Johannesburg, versus West Europe, which is the previous one we used to work with. So on South Africa or Johannesburg North was essentially we got less than 2 milliseconds to the cloud versus Europe where we were sitting at 171. So it makes a huge difference in terms of your clients, and your clients are actually looking at this already. The banks have already turned up, the major South African banks, and we're dealing with a number of the neighboring country banks who are also wanting to connect. So what does this mean? And Afrinic did a fantastic study around cross-border latency results. You can have a look it up. Amrish actually did most of the study, but what it means is that our cross-border connectivity is becoming more fundamental, which means we actually have to all start working together really closely, because our clients are going to want us to do this. So you'll see here, this is by telegeography. In 2018, you'll start seeing the intra-Africa routes becoming more and more strategic, and they're growing, which means cross-border is becoming more relevant in your network strategies. So here I did a little bit of a comparison from, once again, telegeography. So intra-routes 2017 versus intra-routes 2018. So the key things that are driving this is A, cloud, access to content. You're seeing the big hubs starting to emerge. So obviously South Africa's kind of done, but you're seeing the next areas or the next DC growth happening within like a Kenya, Djibouti, Nigeria, Ghana, Morocco, where you're starting to actually have to see those intra-routes happening rather than routing to Europe and back again. Stable infrastructure. So a lot of people look at us and say, wow, I was sitting next to this American lady on the plane and she said, oh, it's so dark in Africa. And you know what, actually in certain areas, absolutely, we do have power issues, but we're seeing huge innovations coming out of Africa. So I don't know if you know around Ethiopia, where Ethiopia is actually using waste to convert it into power. So we're starting to become innovative to overcome these struggles and creating stable power. We've got lots of wind, we've got lots of land, and we've got lots of sun. So you're starting to see these kinds of innovation happen to create the stable infrastructure that's required for this investment. And then African IXPs are real. So Kyle will do a presentation shortly on this, but with AFIX and their work that they've done, you're starting to see large IXPs start to emerge and become larger than some of the European operators. So kind of like Shakira, it's time for Africa, huh? So in terms of our evolution, so I know I had to race through this a bit because I want to try and keep us onto track. But you'll see, and this, I really love the slide because it's exactly, instead of a lot of people start looking either going straight to business sector or enterprise sector or launch an IXP without having a neutral co-location operator. But this is kind of the magic formula that we followed in order to create our success. And we've seen the success around it. Where deregulation happens, neutral DC is formed, successful IXP starts emerging because there's lots of eyeball networks. Content starts investing because there's lots of eyeball networks. Enterprise and consumer business starts having a far better user experience, which therefore means they start growing in the market and therefore start attracting cloud regions to deploy. And that's essentially the secret sauce around it. So I don't want to take too much time. So any questions, anyone? Any ideas? No one? Am I on track? No.
You're on time.
Cool.
Yeah. Comments, questions? We are talking about the African cloud. And Michele just gave a very nice, presentation. So
Cool.
Questions?
No.
Comments?
No.
None? You guys don't want to connect to the cloud? Okay.
Cool.
A round of
Thank you very much,
applause,
everyone.
please.